Christine McDaniel here, host of the Co-Living Code Show. After living in an incredible co-living concept in San Diego for 2 years, I decided to launch my own concept, Kindred Quarters, in 2017. Then, just 1 year later, partnered with 2 technologists to launch Kindred, the first software platform and management solution for co-living operations around the world. On any given day, I get to have really great conversations with the leaders of this new sector of real estate and figured it would be even better to bring you guys along for the ride. On this show, we bring on the founders and CEOs of the most amazing co-living concepts from around the world. We also bring on the real estate investors and developers. These are the innovators, experts, and leaders from around the world that are passionate about co-living. Let's jump right into today's episode. Hi, it's Christine here with the Co-Living Code and Camilo, which he is actually with Selina, which this is a big brand that a lot of you guys have heard. They are growing rapidly and we're super excited to bring him onto the show today. He's actually their innovation product director. I had reached out to multiple people at Selina and I'm like, can we please just get somebody on from Selina? So thank you so much for being here today on the show. Where are you? Are you in Colombia right now?
Yeah, right now I'm in Medellin. Actually, I'm in the Selina location here in Medellin. It's a pleasure to participate on this. Sorry it took a while to get somebody of Selina, but I'm sure we will see some interesting stuff during this interview. I actually wanted to show you a little bit around. As here on this location, we have a really unique pilot that is our music studio. So we work with local artists. And you can see this is kind of the recording place. It's also really quiet. That's why I think it's perfect for an interview. And then you have like a really amazing view while you're recording. Back about myself, I also sing a little bit, well, rap. So I have been recording my songs here, and it's a really cool place where artists come together, and it really feels local, and it goes with the industry that is developing here in Medellin. So that's one of the secrets of Selina, is really pay attention what is happening locally and implement it in our business model.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's a great place to start. So yeah, I know that you guys have had, I know WeWork is backing Selina, kind of partnered with you guys as far as fundraising, right? You guys, I know they injected capital last year. So you guys are really expanding.
So regarding that partnership with WeWork is being more directly with Adam Newman. So the CEO and founder of WeWork has invested personally. And that's so far how the relationship goes. But obviously, there's a lot of similarities between the business models you can compare. And I think that's due to having both companies, Israeli founders, and many of the concepts being inspired on the kibbutz community. So that's why I think there's a close proximity with what you see on WeWork and what you see on Selina in many cases.
And the most of your guys' locations I know right now are in the Bahamas, mostly South America, and then Bahamas. Where are you guys going to jump to next? Are you guys going to come into North America yet?
So funny enough, we are already kind of all over the place regarding developments. So mostly when the company started expanding in Central America, so we had Panama, we had Costa Rica as the first 2 countries that ever existed as Selina. And now we have expanded all across South America. So you can find us from really South America, Argentina, Buenos Aires, to all the way north in Colombia. We are covering currently approximately 12 countries, but every day we open a Selina, or every week at least. That's the average right now. So it's really hard to keep up when you're not in the front of development, but more on the operational part where I am. But yeah, now we are opening in Europe and opening in the US as well. On the US, the locations that come to mind are Miami, New York, and LA. For now, but probably we're gonna grow really exponentially on the US. And in Europe, we already have open locations. The first one to open in Europe was in Porto, Portugal, but we're also gonna cover all the Europe zone as well, especially the digital nomad spots. So Portugal, Eastern Europe, and the UK, as our headquarters are currently located between New York, London, Tel Aviv, and Panama City as well.
Terrific. When does the Los Angeles one open? Do you know roughly?
That information, I really don't know. I don't have it out of my hand. As I said, there's certain divisions in Selina. One is development and is in charge of all crazy growth. And those guys are separate to me because I'm more focused on really how we innovate in our operations. and sometimes I support with a couple of projects, but it's really not my, how to say, my thing right now in Selina.
Yeah, no, and you're right. You guys are growing so fast. That's why I was curious, and that's exciting to watch. So, do you know roughly off the top of your head how many beds do you guys have company wide?
So on that one, I really wish I could give you like the exact number. I know we went beyond the 5,000 last year, like at the end of that last year, but we had opened since then at least probably 5 or 6 more locations, and the bed count on those ones are not clear to me, but you can say that we're above 5,000 right now.
Perfect. And then maybe to some listeners and people watching this interview that aren't familiar with the Selina brand yet, can you maybe explain, the vibe? Like, is it private rooms? Is it more, mixed rooms? Is there both available? What are you guys trying to create?
So yeah, really, Selina stands for travel experience. So we're a platform for nomadic communities to find their home. And in that case, you will see like many services being provided, such as accommodation, but also you're going to see co-work, you're going to see F&B, you're going to see wellness experiences. So I think we explain ourselves as a hotel chain at the beginning, because that's the familiarity, but it really is a disrupted idea regarding how to approach accommodation and how to approach hospitality, because we see so much more opportunity than just provide a room. So on a range of accommodation, we believe in an inclusive model where we have mixed accommodation or community rooms, as we call it, and then you have private accommodation and more boutique kind of hotel look-alike. So in that sense, we believe that if you have $10 a night or you have $100 a night in your budget, you can stay in the same place, meet the same people, live the same experiences. That's what this generation stands for, really about connecting with everybody, regarding of their backgrounds, regardless of their background or like income. And that's where the Selina model of accommodation comes. So yeah, it's really a wide range from mixed community rooms, and then you have private boutique, really unique rooms with a lot of art, a lot of luxury there as well.
No, and you know what? I've already heard, I have a lot of friends that have stayed at your guys' properties. I have not yet, but I've heard amazing things of exactly that, where it's not based, just like you said, you can learn just as much from somebody that's staying, in a $10 a night, part of the property than a $100 a night suite on the same property. But then yet they're still, meeting and socializing and doing events together and activities. And so I think that's really, really cool and kind of helps with show the core essence of co-living that we always talk about, which is community. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It's just everybody coming together. And so because you're the innovation product director. So are you, what kind of things, what's like your average day look like that you're working on?
So I don't think I have a single day that looks alike. So I cannot tell you I have a routine. I was a nomad for the past year. Now I'm a little bit more based here in Medellin, but probably I will be moving to one of our headquarters soon. So my average day is kind of replying some emails. That would be the only thing that is kind of constant throughout my day. But I work in two main things regarding the innovation department, how we bring innovation to Selina. One is obviously helping identify problems that we need to solve in our business model and work with different startups to actually tackle those problems. We have an investment team that actually is looking to invest in some of the travel tech companies out there. So we are really investing heavily on the future of travel. Obviously, innovation is core to what Selina does. We are reinventing the model. So in that sense, we look for the innovation out there. We look for inspiration, and also kind of guiding a little bit, the management of the company on what are the trends out there with travel. I can tell you a lot about AI, blockchain, you name it, Internet of Things, all these big buzzwords. How does it apply to travel? And that's kind of my job to understand it. And then you have the other side, that is how does Selina support innovation entrepreneurship regardless of the industry or vertical. And that is really setting up with our co-working space and with our spaces, kind of an interactive meeting developing vibe where entrepreneurs can come, investors can come, developers can come, and they can meet, interact either in events, either by renting an office, and really how do we approach that innovation ecosystems around the world. and then how we help connect those ecosystems. So a really nice example of one of the works that I have done for the company is I met this amazing hacker school in Mexico City. They have an amazing model where they focus on the base of the pyramid, and they teach people that only know like WhatsApp and Facebook. Basically, in 3 months, they teach them how to code, and they are ready to like have their first work on as a developer. As Selina believes in social impact, I said like, this is a perfect fit, guys. You should grow so much here in Latin America. We have this deficit of talent in Medellin and in many other places. So why don't you expand through Selina? And that's something that we're doing. We're currently in 3 new locations: Panama City, Cancun, and Medellin. We're helping them grow their operation. So as I said, it's not really like linked to travel, but we're being a platform for them to connect to other ecosystems.
That is really cool. No, and that's a great segue because I definitely want to talk about your venture that you're working on, LOKL. So it's funny, it's LOKL, and we're going to have it in the show notes for you guys. And I'm like, oh, what does that acronym stand for? And he's like, no, Christine, it's local. You just say it out. Just like Kindred, right? Everybody says, what does KNDRD stand for? And I'm like, no, it's Kindred. So we would love to hear more about LOKL, which is your brand new startup.
For sure. I think one of the main advantages of working in Selina is that they're really free-minded regarding management. And I cannot say like how much I have developed here as a person, as a professional. And the fact that they have allowed me to work in my venture during working with them is one of, let's say, the biggest advantages that I have had. And obviously, I have had a lot of inspiration from my travels and from working with Selina. And I said, I really want to make the jump, because even before working in Selina, I was dreaming about CoLiving. Like, let's say a little bit of my background is I work in the innovation center here in Medellin. So in that sense, I manage a co-work space of 680 seats. And there I saw all kind of startups, ventures, and all this kind of crazy innovation happening. I said, I want to be part of that. I want to be an entrepreneur. And I started this dream probably 3 years ago, before even CoLiving was a thing, before WeWork was doing it, I think. And I started building the concept, and now we actually are going to implement. And really what LOKL stands for is, one, is creating co-living spaces that really connect to this place. So we are more small boutique. We are not going to do like a huge space, but rather around 50 studios, around 50, 60 studios that really let a community build. And then is really noticing what are the creative communities in that place and building a location for those creative communities. So no locale is going to be the same, no layout is going to be the same, and really is about how do we connect to that local creative community to support the creative leaders of that community to make a change. So it's a little bit of bringing an accelerator to the co-living model. And then the other side that we're doing is we're heavily researching on technology to see how from the beginning we're a tech-enabled business. And on that side, we're coming up with a new concept of how we can allow the co-living part to also be owned by the people living there. So I see a lot of models out there where it's only renting. And I'm a little bit concerned, because all these people are going to rent for their whole lives. And when they come to be 50, 60, what are they going to do when they don't have like the, let's say, energy to keep working, to have an income to pay a rent? So it's really about wondering how we can provide a solution that is both a really nice experience, but also an investment opportunity for the people that are going to live in our spaces. So it's kind of a combination between those two. It has a little bit of blockchain. Again, I'm not super confident in sharing everything, because we have no IP yet, and we have a lot of things that we really believe are going to be disruptive, not only for the co-living market, but for the real estate market itself. But the main principles are, one is giving an investment opportunity for young professionals, and the second one is being a support platform for creative leaders around the world.
Awesome. No, and I feel the same way about ownership, right? So, it's the millennials, and then also Gen Z, they're not going to do a 30-year mortgage. Like, let's get real. They're not, but would they do fractional ownership or something that's modeled off of the timeshare model? And that's what I've kind of talked to people. I don't see it being done yet. I'm excited to watch somebody else, tackle that, because I think that's going to be huge. Like, that is by far, if I knew I can pay fractional for a piece of property, but maybe that's not a property in California, maybe that's a fraction of a piece of ownership, but that ownership can be used anywhere in the world because everybody's remote working, they're mobile. So that's,
You
yes.
basically kind of define our business model on that side. Investment, obviously, there's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of technology base. How do you create trust? So a startup that hasn't developed yet, a project, a building, can't raise money that way. And it's really about giving the power back to the investors, but the small investors, to define what LOKL is going to be. And in that sense, I think probably if you see the timeshare, there's a lot of mistrust on that model. So I wouldn't never refer to as the timeshare of co-living, because I really think there's principle of that I want to grab, but I really want to stay away from the pushy salesman that, like, it's just gonna like try to sell you as much as possible. But this is something that is really gonna give you an opportunity, and actually comes a little bit from a personal background. When I was 19, I inherited a house, and like no 19-year-old should have property at all. Like it's not what you do. But I actually, like sit down and say, like, this is my whole life, right? Like this is what is going to allow me to have security for the rest of my life. So how I can manage this well, and I have managed to invest it, and like I sold the house, invested in a couple of apartments, and since then I have made a lot of money on real estate. And I was like, wow, having a property is such a like blessing, because if I get fired the day like tomorrow, like let's hope not, but that's possible, right? The economy is super changing. I have a house, I can go live there and nobody's gonna kick me out to the street. I can rent it out if I'm gonna travel, make some income. So it's really that like ease that you have with that piece of real estate that I want to provide. But obviously there's a lot of things that our generation are not super comfortable with real estate. One is like it's unaffordable. Nobody can afford real estate
Yeah.
now in a, let's say, middle class income. And the second part is a big commitment. And I think due to technology, we're like super afraid of commitment. We want instant gratification, and we want like flexibility, and we want to be just super movable. It's also replying to some changes of the economy when you don't know you don't have job security. The world is super hyper connected, so you are going to be moving places a lot during your lifetime. So how do we provide flexibility as well with that? And I think that's the parts that I want to take from the timeshare, but really not the pushy sales and like the fractional ownership of just like one single asset, but thinking about how you can really feel owner of your own studio or of your own house, is either like over the world or just like in one single place.
Nice. Oh, cool. Well, we will be excited to watch that. That's for sure. Because that's something that's so needed. You have no idea. So that's great. I love that. So back with Selina, what's your guys' average stay? Like how long do people typically stay at a property?
So it really changes from location to location, and I think is due to the location itself. So, for example, in Medellin, you're going to see way longer stays because it's a city; it has way more to offer than, for example, in a beach, where probably if you stay more than a week, it's going to feel like a routine. It's not going to feel like as exciting, right? So overall, across Selina, we are around 2 to 3 nights an average stay. Obviously, that's because we still have a heavy base of travelers. But I could tell you that in some locations we have apartments that are, let's say, co-living spaces, and that's only on a monthly rent, and that's kind of the average stay. You have like 1 month, 2 months, and then people move on to the next place, or people move to an Airbnb on the city. That is something that we're studying how to make it happen a little bit less, because we do want people to see like Selina as a long-term kind of solution for their needs. But right now, obviously, we have some people that come to the city, use Selina as a landing pad. They will stay here either a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and then probably they will search an Airbnb where they can personalize a little bit more their options.
Yeah, but we're excited to see, and I've had this conversation with a few people offline, like who's going to be, like all of us are waiting, patiently to see who's going to be that global brand. Who's going to be the brand that just takes over like 100 major cities around the world? And you know what you get, every time you jump from city to city around the world, you stay at that brand, you know what to expect, you know what you're going to get, like very similar to hotels like Hyatt, Marriott, like that brand. And, Selina definitely, that's one of the brands that comes up where it's like, okay, I think Selina is going to pull it off.
or Rome. I know that Rome comes up a lot, but then now I think their growth has slowed down tremendously. So yeah, we're hoping, you know, and so with that said, are you guys going to try to shift more to keep these travelers and these nomads in your ecosystem, right? Because if you have all those locations, do you guys incentivize them to stay, like, hey, you know, you're going to this city, we have a location there, you know, trying to keep them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely cross-selling is the thing. You are going to see a lot of the other locations in one location of Selina. You're going to see screens where we show video of the other locations, and possibly when you stay here, you're asked like where you're living. Obviously, really respectfully, we're going to offer something that caters to your needs, and it's really about listening and offering what people need rather than trying to push a product to themselves. So we're really mindful of how to cross-sell and how to upsell inside the business. But it is something that you see. I have met people that have traveled across 10, 12 Selinas and they loved it. There's other people that just because we're a big brand, they're not going to like us. And that's the reality. People like the boutique local thing that it was like made by a local and it's just one thing. And that's a market, right? And that's always going to exist. I don't think that's the user of Selina necessarily. We're somebody that is expecting certain quality and wants, like insurance that if he comes, he's going to have high internet speed, he's going to have a good service, he's going to have a good bed, and he already knows Selina, so that's why he's coming back. But also he's going to be surprised because every Selina, as we remodel buildings that are existing, is going to be different. It's going to feel local. The customer service is going to be different. So I think, yeah, repeated customers it is a thing. Cross sales it is a thing. And if you see, we have kind of draw a path right now in South America. So if you're going to plan to travel South America, you can easily done it through all the Selinas, and you're going to meet all these awesome locations, right? Regarding that, who is going to be the global brand of CoLiving? I think there's definitely going to be multiple. I don't think there's going to be a single brand of CoLiving. It's more towards like the different niches that every CoLiving brand is going to occupy. I think Selina really focused on nomadic communities, and I don't see many CoLiving brands doing that except like big brands. Just Rom, you have Outside, you have a couple, but they're above 16, 17 locations, and they have noticed that because they're really small locations, like doing a big business out of that is really not sustainable. And I think that's the secret where you see all these big brands that have made such a buzz in media, but they haven't grown out of 16, 17 locations, is because the financials is really hard to make it when you're like a small co-living space, right? But then you have really big players coming into the field. You have Bonder, for example. I don't know if you know Bonder, but they made a partnership with a real estate company in Europe that is like the biggest real estate company in Europe. So they have assets, a lot of assets regarding real estate, and they're growing quickly. Then you have the Medici Living Group that they just closed a round of 300 million. So definitely they're going to be growing on the States and in Europe. But I think they reply to a different need of co-living that is more the local co-living, right? And the one that really caters to the local community and that looks for more like a stable long-term rents. And we will see what happens with that, right? Like I have visited a couple of co-living spaces around the world. I'm really amazed about the model. I'm really wondering how they make the financials work, because it's definitely like having a building with more costs to the traditional real estate, and they're competing on that market as well. So we will see what happens, but I'm really excited to see what happens and make part of that movement as well.
No, definitely. And then, so you've been with Selina for 2 years now, right? About 2 years?
I have been with Selina with about 2 years. Probably in June, I would be 2 years with Selina. And yeah, it happened a crazy ride. I started as a special project manager that it was just doing like all the crazy projects of Selina. As we put it, it was like really identifying the big problems, global problems, and working on a design thinking methodology to solve them. And then I was moved to innovation director, where is right now where I am.
Perfect. And then what's your guys' average age? And again, I'm sure it varies over the properties, but what's the demographic typically?
So the typical demographic is really young professionals, I would say. You have a lot of backpackers still like coming through Selina. And again, we believe in an inclusive model where all nomadic communities are welcome. And in that backpacker kind of user type, you're going to see a lot of more young people. But then they're really the ones that stay in multiple Selinas. They go through multiple Selinas that use all our products, are more young professionals between, you could say, 25, 30 years old. But fun enough, again, I think I'm not a big believer of demographics myself. I don't know if you're familiar with the statement of Netflix where they never use demographics, and I think it proves that, like, you can have a housewife of 40 years old that is watching Game of Thrones and loves it, where you could have like one that doesn't, and not because they're like housewives, they like stay home and they have 40, they are going to think anywhere similar. So I think the magic in Selina, I have seen people that at, like 60, 70 years old, they're being nomadic. They transform their lives completely. There's this lady that stays here in Medellin. I actually met her on the Nomad cruise. That is this crazy cruise where they put a bunch of digital nomads together and they cross the Atlantic. And I met her there. She was transforming her life. She said, like, I don't want to stay put. I want to travel. I always wanted to travel. And now I'm going to be a digital nomad. And she's actually staying here, so I see her sometimes. And it's unbelievable because, well, I'm not going to guess her age, but I can tell you she's a little bit above 50. And she's just being this nomadic lifestyle that is only sold for millennials, but it's not really like that. She thinks like a digital nomad, and she's a digital nomad. So again, not a big fan of demographics, but I know like where our age range is going to be between 25 and 30.
Perfect. And then let's jump over the technology piece. So does Selina have its own, I'm sure it has, you guys have your own app, your own software, like what type, so you guys do all the bookings, are any of the properties like smart properties, like keyless access entry, like what kind of tech are you guys running?
Definitely. So I think it's worth to mention we have a huge tech team in Tel Aviv. I think for a startup that is more dedicated to operating like spaces, we have 40 people in our tech team, or at least is going to be 40 people.
Oh my gosh.
Obviously, there's a lot of people working on the basics. That is what you mentioned, the application, the website, having operational systems that allow us to capture data and to understand better the customer behavior. But I think that's, for now, is like a basic for every business to do, right? Like every business needs to have their own like portal, their own application, and their own kind of like operating systems. On that sense, we are really working on that to make it cater to Selina. We're a really unique business. You normally don't have a co-work together with a hotel. So how do we make operating systems that can talk to each other on that side? Also with the F&B business, and how do we make it operationally efficient? And that's a really big focus right now for Selina tech team. And then you have an innovation part that we actually have an innovation guy in the tech team as well, where we work together. And he's more on the crazy experimentation side. I'm like doing more outside innovation. He's doing more internal innovation. And we're setting up a lab in Tel Aviv, actually, where we're developing technologies, as you said, like IoT, Internet of Things, for smart rooms, and how we can provide that. That's going to be a big focus. As well, we're focusing on cashless kind of a stay, where you can basically stay on a Selina and not pay with money, but rather have like kind of a RFID. Sorry, acronyms in English are completely lost for me. But yeah, RFID bracelet, where you can just charge and then pay, and you don't have to worry about cash, about currencies, about things like that. So yeah, definitely there's a lot coming on the innovation side of technology, but also there's a lot of focus on the operational efficiency and really getting the basics right. So all this kind of crazy business can talk to each other, can cooperate. And that's a big challenge that we're working on now, and that I'm sure like this year we will get done.
No, that's awesome to hear. And you're right. The properties that have a combination of both co-working desks, co-working spaces, and co-living spaces, that's their other struggle. It's like they usually have two pieces of software and for each, and how do you integrate all of it? So I think you're right. I think with time that will all become more integrated. And yeah, if you guys have 40 people on your tech team, that'll make it a lot easier to build that stuff out. Well, perfect. So I have one more question. The question I ask everybody, like, where do you personally see co-living going in the future, next 5-10 years? Like, how do you see it on a global level?
I think, well, it might become a buzzword, and that's a concern that I have. It might become like really popular because media likes to, like increment all these things. I don't know if you're familiar with the curve of technology, where like you create a lot of expectations regarding technology, and then like people like see that, for example, blockchain cannot solve your like daily problems, and then people kind of disappointed, and then like that removes a little bit of investment. So I think like for co-living and for this kind of new services popping up, it might be the case where we see kind of a curve where there's going to create a hype, and then people are going to like have a lot of problems with it, and then they're going to like lower a little bit, and then it's going to, let's say, gradually increment to be really a widespread service, and let's say business model that is implemented. I really hope that we move a little bit away from just focusing on the young professionals, because I think a co-living model is something that can benefit everybody. From, you know, like we have elderly, and we have like co-livings of elderly already. We don't call it a co-living, and probably is not the same kind of level of service. But what if we implement co-living for elderly, where you really create community and where you're focused on creating community, not only providing, you know, like a good accommodation for elderly people, for families, you know, like we have smaller and smaller families now. So, you know, like for kids to play together, for, you know, like parents to have support, for they to have services and educational services that make sense for them. And then obviously you have the young professionals. That is really what the market is focusing on right now. But I hope that it will be divided. As I said, like in LOKL, we're focusing on creative leaders. And by creative leaders, we mean entrepreneurs, freelancers, and artists. And it's really how we provide services for that community. It's not really about, you know, like I'm a finance guy, I only want to spend, things like that. I hope there's a co-living for that, but we're not the co-living for that. And I really want the industry to specialize, because then is when we're going to really reply to the needs of communities, and we're really going to create this that it goes with the living part of thing.
No, that's great. No, I love the answer. And so, okay, but I mean, it is co-living, you're right. Like, I'm like, oh, is it becoming this trendy buzzword? However, if you compare it to co-working, you know, co-working's been around for a decade now. And I don't feel like that's like a trendy word or buzzword. Like, I just feel like that's an actual way of working. So do you feel like co-living can still be in that same vein when it's, you know?
I think we face bigger challenges on this industry because one thing is getting into the office of people, one thing is getting into the house of people. When you have people working together, obviously you have a lot of collaboration, openness. You know, there's not so much need for privacy, and you're not gonna find such an intimate problem for people. But when you're kind of jumping into the space people live, there's a lot of things that you're gonna face challenges with. So my thing is, when we talk that community is the solution and that everything should be community, we're not being mindful of like really respecting privacy as well, and selling that being lonely is also a good thing sometimes, because it gives you time to reflect, it gives you time for feeling, you know, like to be with your own. So how those models of co-living are going to reply to that? Because you're really focused on creating community, but how do you respect privacy? How do you create privacy spaces? How do you create really a sustainable way of living? I think is the challenge. So again, probably we're going to see a boom where there's going to be a bunch of co-livings, and probably some of them are going to fail because they're not going to reply exactly to the needs of people, and because we're not specializing from the beginning. So I think, again, it's going to be like a big boom. I think CoWorking, you saw it as well, and you see it right now. There was a big boom. WeWork was born. There was a couple of, like, Impact Hub was born. There's a couple of big brands that made it, but there's a lot of brands that were, you know, like just never were able to grow, or like spaces that were never able to provide what they're promising. So I think for what co-working was promising, that was transforming the way we work, yes, it has done it, but it hasn't done it in the way and magnitude that probably like 5 years or 4 years you were here and it was going to do it.
No, okay, yeah, no, I can see that for sure. And I love what you say about this bell curve, you know, where it's like all this excitement. And I am waiting too to see, because there's no history. There's not enough history of like anybody complaining online yet about their living experience at a certain co-living home in the world. Like there's no data yet, right? Because, and there's review, like we're missing the reviews and the experiences because we're just in the beginning, right? So I'm curious to see how that goes, right? If there's some, you know, some that people are starting to complain about the experiences.
I can tell you, I have seen two major complaints right now, and it's price and space. We promote like these really small spaces. That's the solution, micro housing. I also believe in micro housing, but not everybody likes it. And that's the problem. Like, you sell a really expensive room because none is like competing to the market prices. We say like, is the solution affordable housing? I have seen really crazy prices in like outside areas of London, of other cities. That is like really, like a studio could be the same price. So, and then it's a really small space because you want to make space efficiency for the business model to work, right? And those are two major complaints right now. And those are two major challenges of like, how do you provide a private space that it makes sense for the business in size wise, but also it feels spacious, it feels your own, it feels personal, it feels like it's your space. And then how you really nail down to provide services and all this community layer at the same prices of the market, because those are two things that you're going to see a lot of complaints in every co-living. I think my research is going to the Google Maps, clicking on the reviews, and then reading what are the worst reviews and why are they complaining. And those are the two major things that I'm seeing right now. It's too expensive and it's too small. So how do you tackle those two things, I think, is one of the secret, because it needs to be a little bit more expensive, a little bit more small to make a sense as a business.
Yeah, got it. Nope, you're right. You're right. That is some things I've been hearing, kind of here and there too. So you're right. Only time will tell. We will see. But I'm glad you're on this crusade also to make, amazing spaces and build community, and then bring. And that's another theme that I've been hearing lately is something that contributes to the local community and the town you're in, and how do you guys add value to that town and bring the essence into your concept. So really appreciate you, Camilo, coming on. So glad we finally got Selina on the show. So you guys can check out show notes if you guys want to click the links. We'll link also your new project too. So we're super excited to see what you do here in the near future with LOKL. And thanks again for coming on today.
No, it was really my pleasure. And well, for everybody listening, I really invite you to stay tuned with LOKL, because we're going to do like really great things. And I really appreciate all the input, ideas, partnerships that people can think of. And for Selina, well, obviously I'm always approachable. Christine can have my contact data, so you can contact her and she will connect us. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you want to learn more about co-living, you could check out my book on Amazon, The Co-Living Code. And of course, if you're looking for the perfect software to power your co-living concept, check out kindred.io, KNDRD.io. Thanks.